yet another Catholic kingdom on the Iberian Peninsula. Now, for the Spanish Christian kingdoms, well, they not only fight the Muslim Moors, but they often fight with each other in a series of shifting and alternating alliances, a real-life Game of Thrones, as the monarchs of Christian Spain engage in bitter battles amongst themselves whenever a particular king's demands get too high or too greedy. For example, enemies and rivals then fight alongside one another, and expedient political and military friendships, brief ones, that is, flourish. Nothing exemplifies these shifting alliances and bitter rivalries of Spain's Christian nobility than the tale of Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, the 11th century Castilian adventurer, also known as El Cid, who's around from about 1040 to 1099 AD. Well, the Cid's life and deeds prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that personal gain, the lust for wealth and riches, had as great a part to play in the Reconquista, as great a part perhaps as crusading religious idealism. El Cid first served under Sancho II, and following the king's assassination, he went over to his brother, Alfonso VI, who soon sends Diego, El Cid, on an important mission to collect the massive tribute of gold, silver, and jewels from the Muslim king of Seville. El Cid ends up being accused of withholding funds for himself and is banished from Castile. But good fighting men are hard to come by. So Diego, El Cid, becomes a soldier for hire, and the sword of El Cid serves the Muslim king of Saragossa, where the Arabic term, the name El Cid, Lord, is given to him by his faithful Muslim followers. And so, the Lord Cid serves both Muslim and Christian banners, and quickly becomes a legend, since he is never defeated in battle. His last great campaign in Valencia ignites as Diego the Cid is summoned by the Muslim king from Saragossa to put down a rebellion. Cid answers the call and avails the uprising with a small, battle-hardened army of both Muslim and Christian mercenary soldiers. But Diego breaks his agreement with the ruler of Saragossa and remains the virtual ruler in Valencia. Cid keeps the Muslim king in protective custody, but the Muslim king soon dies mysteriously, and El Cid crowns himself the new king of Valencia. Over the succeeding years, the Cid fights both Muslims and Christians and never loses a battle until finally an arrow finds its mark and kills the Cid. Following his death, the Lord Cid's kingdom falls as a result of a brief revival of Muslim military strength. The Moors get much-needed assistance to halt the advancing Christians from the Almoravids, Berbers from North Africa, a fanatical sect of holy warriors, who fight their way up from the Sahara and unite the Muslims, but at a great cost, for they are completely intolerant of other religions and customs. The Almoravids cost many thousands of Jews, Mozarebs, and liberal-minded Arabs to flee north into the Christian kingdoms. The northern Christian kingdoms gain much-needed manpower, talent, and economic resources. Muslim Spain is transformed by the Almohades, that's their Spanish name, into a province of an Islamic empire that has its capital in North Africa. And the Muslim victories do not last, as all of Europe becomes aroused with the spirit of the Crusades. By the time that the life of Diego de Vivar, El Cid the Lord, richly embellished with legendary deeds, ends, the Cid is speedily elevated to semi-divine status, and he becomes the national hero of Spain. The legend of El Cid was influenced and magnified by the early 13th century epic poem, Cantar de Mio Cid, the Song of My Cid, one of the greatest of all medieval epics, and the earliest known surviving major literary work in the vernacular Castilian language. The original manuscript has sadly been lost, but we have, and we only have part of the epic. We only have part of the story. Now, the theme of this poem, with many additions and variations, inspires numerous writers in Spain and elsewhere, and helps to fix the popular conception of the Spanish character. The poem is a highly fictionalized account of El Cid. For example, in the narrative, Diego's daughters are whipped and humiliated while being stripped naked in public by their husbands. This is simply historically inaccurate, since his two daughters did very well and marry into the Navarrese and Castilian ruling families. The legend of El Cid is further developed by a 17th century Valencian dramatist, Belivis de Castro, in his play Las Mocedades del Cid, the youth of El Cid, which is around 1618. De Castro is attracted to the culture of Castile and draws heavily upon traditional ballads of the region, transferring the epic tragedy to the stage. De Castro's work then becomes the basis for a 17th century French stage play written by Pierre Corneille called The Cid. This is 1637, written in an elegant, rhetorical, and grand style, which was an immense popular success, but was considered morally defective by Cardinal Richelieu. Richelieu suppresses public performances because he's worried that the play's concentration on the conflict between passionate love, family loyalty, and honor might actually help spark off a rebellion in France. Now, in reality, historical, not literary, that is, we have few contemporary documents concerning El Cid. We do have detailed eyewitness accounts of the Cid's conquest from the Arab historian Al-Gamaha. We also have the Historia Rafarici, a reliable and private 12th century Latin chronicle of the Cid's life. But it is difficult to build a complex biography of El Cid since legend plays such a dominant role in the Cid story. All right, with that thought, we're going to take another short musical break. When we return, we will continue with the story of the Reconquista and some of the great Spanish Christian kings involved, like James I, Santiago I of Aragon, who's around from about 1208 to 1276, and Alfonso X, also known as Alfonso the Wise, who's around from around 1221 to 1285. Alfonso presides over a royal court that is the envy of all Europe. And Alphonse sparks the flowering of Spanish culture, art, science, literature, and mysticism in the Christian kingdoms. A little later in the program, we're going to check